I'd like to explain autism in just 5 minutes, clearly, calmly, and in a way that actually makes sense. And to do that, there are 8 ideas that change everything once you understand them. And here's the thing, autism is often talked about in complicated ways, but it becomes much clearer once you understand these key ideas. Let's take a closer look at that. Point 1 is that autism is not a disease. There is nothing that needs to be cured or removed. Autism is a natural variation in how the brain is wired, and very much like differences in eye color or sensitivity to light, it's part of the human diversity, not an illness. And understanding that foundation makes everything much easier. And once you see it like that, a lot becomes clearer. Now let's move to point 2, which is that autism begins with perception, not with behavior. What we see from the outside is always the result of how the brain filters information. Sounds, lights, textures, movements, and internal signals can arrive in a different balance, sometimes stronger, sometimes quieter. And this difference in sensory processing is what shapes the outward behavior. If you think about it, that explains quite a lot. Next, point 3, and this is the idea that autism is a spectrum. There isn't one single autistic profile. Instead, autistic people have many different combinations of strengths, sensitivities, and processing styles. Some enjoy social interaction, others prefer structure. Some seek movement, while others need calm. And all of these expressions belong to the same spectrum. And you know what? That actually makes perfect sense, because now we're talking about point 4. And that explains how everyday sensations can feel more intense or less intense than expected. One person might hear noise as a single overwhelming layer, while another barely notices faint sounds. Light can feel too bright or strangely dim. Touch can register as a very strong or hardly register at all. These aren't choices, they are naturally outcomes of how the sensory system functions. And funnily enough, once you realize that, behavior starts to look entirely logical. Now let's look at point 5, which is that behavior is always communication. What may look like restlessness, withdrawal, or repetition often reflects how the sensory world feels in that moment. These behaviors help organize thoughts, reduce stress, or create clarity. When you understand the perception behind the action, the behavior becomes completely logical. And here's the curious part, moving to point 6. Autistic people often benefit most from clarity and predictability. Difficulties usually arise in environments that are noisy, unpredictable, or socially ambitious. Clear communication, consistent routines, and transparent expectations create stability, make the world easier to navigate. The aim isn't to change the person, but to reduce the overload around them. And let me put that in another way, and let's come to point 7, which reminds us that autism also includes real strengths. Many autistic people excel in pattern recognition, detailed thinking, and deep focus, honesty, or analytical skills. These strengths become especially clear when their sensory needs are respected and when they can work in a rhythm that suits them naturally. And this is really the heart of it. And finally, point 8 brings all this together. Autism is a different rhythm of perceiving the world, not a lesser one. When you understand that, perception shapes every experience. Everything else becomes easier to interpret: communication, preferences, reaction, and behavior. It shifts the view away from judgment and towards genuine understanding. And honestly, once you look at it through this lens, everything softens a bit. To finish, these 8 points helped you see autism in a clear way, and you've already taken the most important step, recognizing that people experience the world differently, and when we understand those differences, we create a space for connection, respect, and inclusion.